As my grandmother said when she was crowned, coronations are a declaration of our hopes for the future. And I know she's up there, fondly keeping an eye on us, and she'll be a very proud mother.
1 minute ago, the royal website went dark. Then a single line appeared that sent shockwaves through every newsroom in Britain. No warning, no explanation, just a timestamp and silence that felt deafening. For a family that never moves without precision, this felt like chaos. Journalists scrambled, phones exploded with unanswered questions. Even palace insiders were left in the dark. On what seemed like an ordinary day, the official royal website posted something that immediately caught the attention of royal watchers around the world. A single sentence appeared on the homepage, brief and direct, stating that a formal announcement would be made at 6 o'clock that evening. There was no additional context provided, no hints about the subject matter, and no explanation for why this particular announcement required such specific timing. For an institution that typically operates with carefully planned communications and advance notice to the press, this approach was notably different. Royal announcements usually follow a predictable pattern. Trusted journalists often receive background briefings hours or even days before official statements. Palace aides typically provide context and talking points to help shape the narrative. These established channels help ensure that when news breaks, there's already a framework in place for how it should be understood and reported. None of that happened this time. The announcement came without any of the usual preliminary signals that something was coming. No journalists had been quietly briefed, no reliable royal correspondents had dropped hints in their morning columns. The message simply appeared, offering nothing more than a timestamp and the promise of information to come. According to reports from several news outlets, this departure from standard procedure immediately raised questions among those who regularly cover the royal family. When the monarchy breaks from its usual communication patterns, it typically signals that something significant is developing. The absence of detail, rather than calming concerns, had the opposite effect. Newsrooms across the country began reaching out to their palace contacts, trying to gather any information about what might be announced. Phone calls were made to sources who usually had advanced knowledge of royal plans. Reporters checked with each other to see if anyone had received even the smallest hint about what was coming. The responses were consistent. Nobody seemed to know what this announcement would contain. As the day progressed, news programs found themselves in an unusual position. They had confirmed that an announcement was coming, but without any information about its content, they were left to fill airtime with speculation. Presenters and royal experts discussed various possibilities, ranging from routine administrative matters to more serious concerns. Some theories focused on potential health issues within the royal family. Others wondered if there might be changes to royal duties or responsibilities. A few even raised the possibility of more dramatic developments, though most acknowledged these were unlikely. The speculation wasn't limited to media outlets. Social media platforms saw a surge in discussion as people shared their own theories about what might be announced. The lack of concrete information created space for all kinds of interpretations, some based on careful analysis of recent royal activities, others driven more by imagination than evidence. What made the situation particularly noteworthy was that even experienced royal correspondents, people who have spent years building relationships with palace sources, reported being unable to get clear answers. Several journalists noted in their coverage that this level of communication lockdown was unusual. If this was a planned strategy, it appeared to have been executed with tight control over information, bypassing the channels that typically provide advanced context for major announcements. This communication approach carried significance beyond simple curiosity. Throughout its history, the monarchy has relied on carefully managed information flow to maintain control over its public narrative. When that system breaks down or is deliberately set aside, it often indicates that something important is happening behind palace walls. The lack of structure around this announcement suggested either an urgent development or a conscious choice to handle this particular matter differently. As the afternoon continued, another detail began drawing attention. William and Kate had been scheduled to make a public appearance earlier that day. According to several news sources, they failed to show up for this engagement. Under normal circumstances, such absences are explained in advance or attributed to last-minute changes in schedule. This time, no explanation was immediately provided. The timing of their absence, combined with the mysterious announcement scheduled for later, that evening led many observers to connect the two events. If the announcement was going to come from the King or Queen consort, there would be no particular reason for William and Kate to cancel their own plans. The fact that they had stepped back from their scheduled activities suggested they might be directly involved in whatever was coming. Royal protocol typically dictates that major announcements flow from the top of the hierarchy downward. The reigning monarch speaks first on matters of institutional importance. Other members of the royal family generally defer to that established order. But the pattern of events during this particular day suggested something different might be developing. As 6 o'clock approached, the tone of coverage began to shift. What had started as curiosity mixed with speculation took on a more serious quality. People across the country found themselves paying attention in a way that went beyond casual interest. There was a growing sense that this announcement might carry real weight, that it could potentially affect how people understood the royal family and its role. The decision to provide only a time without any context had created an information vacuum, and that vacuum had been filled with tension. By choosing to communicate in this particular way, whoever was behind the announcement had ensured maximum attention. Whether intentional or not, the strategy had worked. When 6 o'clock finally arrived, millions of people were watching, waiting to see what had prompted such an unusual approach. The monarchy has always functioned partly through symbolism and careful control of its public image. Every appearance, every statement, every photograph is typically considered and planned. So when the established patterns are broken, when the careful choreography is set aside, it sends its own message before any words are spoken. The silence before this announcement communicated as much as whatever words would follow. It suggested that something fundamental might be shifting, that the rules governing how the royal family operated might be changing in ways that weren't yet fully clear. When the scheduled time arrived and screens lit up across the country, viewers found themselves looking at something unexpected. Instead of King Charles or Queen Camilla, it was William and Kate who appeared to deliver the announcement. The setting was notably different from typical royal broadcasts. There were no ceremonial backdrops, no formal throne room arrangements, and no visible palace staff waiting in the wings. The environment appeared to be a simple private office space. According to royal protocol observers, this represented a departure from established practice. Major announcements from the monarchy traditionally come from the reigning monarch or are delivered on their behalf with clear authorization. For the heir to the throne and his wife to make an independent announcement of this nature marked an unusual break from convention. William began speaking without the elaborate formal greetings that typically open royal addresses. His delivery was described by several commentators as direct and measured. He spoke about the role of the monarchy in contemporary society, emphasizing that it represented not just symbolic value but carried practical responsibilities to the people. The phrasing suggested a focus on active duty rather than ceremonial function. Kate followed with her own remarks, which multiple news outlets characterized as carefully worded but firm. She spoke about the relationship between the institution and the public, framing it in terms of trust rather than tradition. Her comments appeared designed to establish that their approach would prioritize genuine connection with citizens over adherence to historical customs when those customs no longer served a clear purpose. Several royal correspondents noted the absence of any visible sign that King Charles or Queen Camilla had endorsed or were even aware of this announcement in advance. There were no family photographs in the background, no references to consultation with senior royals, and no indication that this had gone through the usual channels of palace approval. William and Kate appeared to be acting independently, which raised immediate questions about coordination within the royal family. The substance of their announcement centered on what they called the Diana Initiative. Kate explained that this would be a global non-profit organization built around principles associated with Princess Diana's approach to public service. The initiative would focus on direct engagement with communities, transparency in its operations, and attention to issues affecting people who often lack access to support systems. According to the information they provided, the Diana Initiative would operate differently from traditional royal charities. Rather than functioning primarily through patronage and occasional visits, the organization would involve sustained, hands-on work. Kate made clear that she intended to be personally involved in the day-to-day operations, not simply lending her name to the cause. The areas of focus outlined for the initiative included mental health services for children and teenagers, maternal healthcare access, and support for marginalized communities. These topics were described as reflecting Diana's long-standing interests while being structured to address current needs. The announcement emphasized that this would involve building partnerships with existing organizations rather than creating entirely separate structures. Kate detailed plans to visit shelters, healthcare facilities, and community centers regularly. She indicated that many of these visits would not be publicized in advance and would not necessarily include media coverage. The goal, as she described it, was to engage with people in substantive ways, rather than conducting appearances primarily designed for photographs and headlines. News coverage immediately began comparing this approach to Princess Diana's well-documented hands-on style of charity work. During her time as a member of the royal family, Diana had become known for direct personal engagement with people affected by various issues, from AIDS patients to individuals experiencing homelessness. She often chose to work in ways that prioritized genuine connection over media opportunities. The public response to the announcement was notably strong. Social media platforms showed significant engagement with the news, with many users expressing support for the initiative. The phrase "People's Queen" began appearing in posts and comments, a deliberate echo of the title that had been applied to Diana. Multiple news outlets reported on this trend, noting that it suggested a transfer of public affection and respect from Diana's memory to Kate's active work. Polling conducted in the days following the announcement showed high levels of public approval. According to data gathered by various research firms, substantial majorities expressed positive views about the Diana initiative and the approach William and Kate were taking. Many respondents indicated they appreciated what they saw as a more direct form of royal service. The initiative's structure, as outlined in the announcement and subsequent information releases, included provisions for transparency that went beyond typical charity practices. Financial information would be made publicly available, partnerships would be documented, and regular updates about the initiative's work would be provided. This emphasis on openness appeared designed to build and maintain public trust through verifiable accountability. Several royal historians and commentators noted that this level of transparency was unusual for organizations associated with the royal family. While royal charities typically meet legal requirements for financial disclosure, they don't always prioritize making information easily accessible to the general public. The Diana Initiative's commitment to proactive transparency represented a different philosophy about how royal-associated organizations should operate. Kate's personal commitment to the initiative extended beyond public appearances. Reports from various news sources indicated she had been meeting with experts in relevant fields, including mental health professionals, maternal health advocates, and social service providers. These meetings were described as substantive working sessions rather than brief courtesy visits. The announcement also included information about how the initiative would measure its impact. Rather than relying primarily on metrics like funds raised or number of events held, the organization would track outcomes related to the people and communities it aimed to serve. This focus on measurable impact represented another departure from how some traditional royal charities have operated. William's role in supporting the initiative was described as complementary to Kate's leadership. While she would focus on the Diana Initiative specifically, he would continue his existing work on environmental issues and mental health, with coordination between their efforts where their interests overlapped. The announcement framed this as a partnership model rather than a hierarchical structure. The timing of the announcement, coming relatively early in King Charles's reign, added another layer of significance. Some observers noted that launching such a major independent initiative without waiting for explicit blessing from the new king suggested confidence in their position and their relationship with the public. Others interpreted it as a sign that William and Kate were preparing to take on more prominent roles sooner than traditional timelines might have suggested. Coverage in international media outlets picked up on the global ambitions outlined for the Diana Initiative. The announcement had made clear that while the organization would be based in the United Kingdom, its work would extend internationally. Partnerships with organizations in other countries were already being discussed, according to the information provided. The response from the public appeared to reflect not just support for the specific programs being proposed, but appreciation for what many saw as a more modern approach to royal duty. Comments and reactions shared across various platforms suggested that people valued what they perceived as authenticity and genuine commitment to making a practical difference in people's lives. While public reaction to the Diana Initiative announcement was overwhelmingly positive, the response from within palace walls told a very different story. According to multiple reports from sources close to the royal household, the official reaction from King Charles and Queen Camilla was conspicuous silence. No congratulatory statements were issued, No messages of support appeared on official royal social media accounts. The institutional machinery that typically celebrates royal initiatives remained notably quiet. This absence of acknowledgement did not go unnoticed by royal correspondents and commentators. Several journalists who regularly cover palace activities noted that it was unusual for such a significant announcement from senior royals to receive no formal recognition from the monarch. Typically, when members of the royal family launch major charitable initiatives, there are at least brief statements of encouragement or support from other family members, particularly from those higher in the line of succession. Reports from palace insiders, shared with various news outlets in the days following the announcement, painted a picture of considerable tension behind closed doors. King Charles was described as being taken by surprise by the announcement. According to these sources, he had not been consulted in advance about the Diana initiative or the approach William and Kate planned to take. The timing and independence of their action reportedly left him uncertain about how to respond. The situation was particularly complex given the transition period the monarchy was experiencing. Charles had waited decades to become king, and his reign was still in its relatively early stages. Having established patterns and expectations, suddenly shifted during this period, created challenges for how he could assert his authority without appearing to undermine popular initiatives that the public clearly supported. For Queen Camilla, the announcement carried additional layers of complication. Over many years, she had worked to reshape her public image following the controversies that marked her earlier relationship with Charles. Through consistent charity work and carefully managed public appearances, she had gradually moved from being a controversial figure to gaining a degree of public acceptance. This transformation had required patience and persistent effort. The Diana initiative, with its explicit invocation of Princess Diana's name and legacy, unavoidably brought renewed attention to historical dynamics. While Kate's announcement was not framed as criticism of anyone currently in the royal family, the very act of celebrating Diana's approach to royal duty carried implicit comparisons. For Camilla, who had spent years trying to establish her own identity separate from Diana's shadow, this represented an uncomfortable turn of events. According to reports from sources familiar with palace discussions, there were conversations about how to respond to the Diana initiative. Some advisors reportedly suggested that the organization should be brought under formal royal oversight, integrated into the existing structure of royal charities and patronages. This approach would have maintained institutional control and ensured consistency with established protocols. However, other voices within the palace recognized the potential problems with such a move. Control of an initiative that had been presented as independent and had already gained substantial public support could easily be perceived negatively. It might appear as though the institution was trying to contain or limit something that resonated with people precisely because of its independent character. The optics of such action, several advisors reportedly argued, could damage the monarchy's relationship with the public. The decision that emerged from these discussions was essentially to do nothing. There would be no official embrace of the Diana initiative, but also no overt opposition. The strategy appeared to be based on waiting to see whether the initiative would maintain its momentum or gradually lose public attention over time. This passive approach avoided immediate confrontation but did nothing to resolve the underlying tensions. William, according to sources close to him, understood the dynamics at play. He recognized that moving forward without explicit blessing from his father represented a break from traditional protocol. However, he also believed that the work itself was too important to delay while waiting for institutional approval that might never come. His position, as described by those familiar with his thinking, was that demonstrating value through action would ultimately prove more important than following procedural niceties. The relationship between father and son became strained during this period, though the tension played out through absence rather than confrontation. There were no reported arguments or heated exchanges. Instead, there was simply less communication, fewer interactions, and a growing distance. Both men continued their royal duties, but the warm family relationship that had been publicly visible became harder to detect. This internal division began manifesting in observable ways. Media coverage started shifting its focus noticeably toward William and Kate. News programs that had initially devoted significant time to covering King Charles's early reign activities began giving more prominence to stories about the Diana initiative and related work. Headlines increasingly featured William and Kate's names, while coverage of Charles's ceremonial duties received less attention. The change in media dynamics reflected broader shifts in public interest. Editors and producers make decisions about coverage based partly on audience engagement, and the data appear to show stronger public interest in William and Kate's activities. Stories about their work generated more online traffic, more social media discussion, and more sustained attention than routine coverage of the King and Queen consorts' engagements. Royal correspondents began adjusting their focus accordingly. Journalists who had initially positioned themselves to cover the new King's reign found that their editors were more interested in stories about the younger generation of royals. Press photographers noticed that assignments following William and Kate were more likely to produce images that publications wanted to use prominently. This shift in media attention had practical consequences within the palace structure itself. Staff members and advisors began recognizing where influence and public interest were flowing. Young professionals working in royal communications reportedly started seeking positions with the teams supporting William and Kate rather than those focused on the King and Queen consort. This wasn't necessarily motivated by personal loyalty, but by professional calculation about where meaningful work was happening and where careers might advance. The change extended beyond just media coverage and staffing. Other members of the royal family, particularly younger royals with their own charitable interests, began looking to the Diana Initiative as a potential model. Several reportedly reached out to the teams around William and Kate to discuss collaboration or to learn about how they had structured their approach. This represented a subtle but significant shift in where people within the broader royal ecosystem were looking for leadership and direction. Palace insiders noted that even the flow of information began changing. Journalists seeking background on royal activities started directing more of their inquiries to communications staff at Kensington Palace, where William and Kate were based, rather than to Buckingham Palace, the traditional centre of royal communications. This shift in information channels reflected the recognition that public interest was increasingly centred on William and Kate's activities. The geographical separation between palaces took on symbolic significance. Buckingham Palace, the official residence of the monarch and the traditional seat of royal power, was becoming less central to the daily narrative of royal activity. Kensington Palace, where William and Kate maintained their offices, was increasingly where reporters and the public looked for news about royal initiatives that seemed to matter. None of this represented formal changes to titles or official responsibilities. The hierarchy remained unchanged on paper. Charles was still king, William was still heir apparent, and all formal protocols remained in place. But the informal dynamics of influence, attention, and perceived relevance were shifting in ways that couldn't be reversed by protocol or tradition. Royal historians noted parallels to earlier periods when generational transitions within the monarchy created similar tensions. The challenge has always been managing the period when an older generation still holds formal power, while a younger generation gains public favour and demonstrates greater connection with contemporary concerns. These transitions have rarely been smooth, even in families without the added complexity of public scrutiny and institutional expectations. The situation was further complicated by the fact that neither William and Kate nor Charles and Camilla were acting, with obvious malice toward each other. This wasn't a dramatic family feud playing out in public. It was something more subtle and perhaps more difficult to resolve precisely because it wasn't based on personal animosity, but on fundamentally different visions of what the monarchy should be and how it should operate in the modern world. The true measure of the Diana Initiative became evident not in the initial announcement or public reaction, but in the sustained work that followed. According to reports from multiple news outlets and community organisations, Kate's involvement extended well beyond ceremonial appearances. She began making regular visits to facilities and programs connected to the initiative's focus areas, and many of these visits were conducted without advance media notification. Staff members at various shelters and community centres reported encounters with Kate that differed markedly from typical royal visits. Rather than brief walkthroughs with photographers documenting every moment, these were often extended conversations held in private settings. Social workers and counsellors who participated in these meetings described them as genuine working sessions where Kate asked detailed questions and took notes about challenges and potential solutions. One of the first major projects launched under the Diana Initiative was a network of mental health support services specifically designed for children and teenagers dealing with trauma and grief. According to program directors who spoke with various news organisations, the inspiration came partly from recognition of gaps in existing services and partly from personal understanding of how young people struggle with loss when adequate support isn't available. The mental health programs were structured to provide multiple levels of support, from crisis intervention to long-term counseling. According to information released by the initiative, partnerships were established with existing mental health organizations rather than creating entirely new systems. This approach was described as more efficient and allowed for faster implementation since it built on infrastructure and expertise that already existed. Reports from counselors working within these programs indicated that the services were reaching young people who had previously fallen through gaps in the healthcare system, children from families without resources to access private mental health care, teenagers in foster care systems, and young people in rural areas with limited services were among those benefiting from the expanded support network. Kate also initiated a series of private sessions focused on maternal health issues. According to healthcare professionals who participated, these meetings brought together obstetricians, midwives, public health researchers, and women who had experienced complications during pregnancy or childbirth. The sessions were described as frank discussions about systemic problems in maternal healthcare, including issues of racial disparities in outcomes and access barriers faced by women in underserved communities. Multiple participants in these maternal health discussions shared accounts with journalists about the nature of the conversations. They described Kate as actively engaged, asking follow-up questions and pushing for specific details about what changes would make the most difference. Rather than simply listening to prepared presentations, she reportedly encouraged debate and disagreement among participants to surface different perspectives on complex problems. The outcomes from these maternal health sessions began translating into concrete policy recommendations. According to healthcare advocates involved in the process, proposals were developed for improving screening protocols, expanding access to prenatal care in underserved areas, and enhancing training for healthcare providers about recognizing warning signs of complications. While implementation of these recommendations would ultimately depend on government health agencies and medical institutions. Having them endorsed by the Diana Initiative gave them additional visibility and credibility. William's work during this period focused significantly on climate resilience and environmental sustainability. His approach paralleled Kate's in emphasizing direct engagement over ceremonial involvement. According to reports from environmental organizations, he began attending conferences and working sessions not as a keynote speaker, but as a participant in discussions about practical solutions. One widely reported incident occurred at a climate forum focused on community resilience in the face of extreme weather events. A young person from a region affected by severe flooding asked William directly whether his attendance was motivated by genuine commitment or primarily for public relations purposes. William's response, which was captured on video by an attendee and subsequently shared widely online, acknowledged the validity of the question and emphasized that his value should be judged by sustained action rather than promises. The authenticity of this exchange resonated with many observers who had grown skeptical of high-profile figures making brief appearances at important events without following through with substantive involvement. According to social media analysis conducted by various research firms, the video clip generated millions of views and largely positive commentary about William's willingness to be held accountable. As the Diana Initiative's work continued, accounts began emerging from people who had direct encounters with its programs. A teenage boy who had received support through the mental health services spoke with a local news outlet about his experience. He described feeling heard in a way that hadn't happened in previous interactions with support systems. His account emphasized that the help he received felt personalized rather than formulaic. A young mother who participated in a community health program associated with the Maternal Health Initiative shared her story with journalists as well. She described how the program had connected her with prenatal care that she had struggled to access through normal channels. Her experience highlighted how the initiative's partnerships with local organizations were creating practical pathways to services that theoretically existed but were often difficult for people to navigate. These individual stories, accumulating over time across different communities, created a narrative that couldn't be controlled or manufactured by palace communications teams. People were choosing to share their experiences because they found them meaningful, not because they were prompted to do so for publicity purposes. This organic spread of personal accounts gave the Diana Initiative a form of credibility that traditional public relations efforts struggled to achieve. The initiative's commitment to transparency extended beyond general principles to specific practices. Financial reports were published regularly with detailed breakdowns of funding sources and expenditures. Partnership agreements with other organizations were documented and made publicly accessible. Progress reports on specific programs included not just success stories, but also frank acknowledgements of challenges and areas where goals had not been met. According to non-profit governance experts who analyzed the Diana Initiative's operations, this level of transparency was unusual, even among well-regarded charitable organizations. While most legitimate charities meet legal requirements for financial disclosure, few make such extensive efforts to proactively share information about their operations, decision-making processes, and outcomes. The initiative's work began expanding beyond the United Kingdom. Partnerships were established with organizations in Canada, Australia, and several Southeast Asian countries. These international collaborations focused on adapting the initiative's approaches to different cultural contexts and healthcare systems. According to program coordinators involved in these efforts, the emphasis was on supporting existing local organizations rather than imposing predetermined models from outside. William and Kate made several international trips connected to the Diana Initiative's expanding work. Unlike traditional royal tours, which typically involve carefully choreographed public appearances and formal meetings with government officials, these trips included substantial time spent with community organizations and service providers. Itineraries were described by those who traveled with them as focused on learning and building relationships, rather than on generating media coverage. The impact of this different approach to royal duty began influencing other members of the royal family, particularly younger royals who were still defining their public roles. According to sources within royal circles, several of them reached out to William and Kate's teams to discuss how they might adopt similar approaches in their own charitable work. There was reportedly particular interest in the transparency mechanisms and the model of sustained engagement rather than ceremonial patronage. This gravitational pull toward the Diana Initiative's model represented a subtle but significant shift within the broader royal ecosystem. Younger royals were looking to William and Kate not just because of their position in the line of succession, but because their approach seemed to be connecting with public expectations in ways that traditional methods were not. The Palace Press Office reportedly took note of these dynamics. Communications staff observed that stories about the Diana Initiative and related activities generated substantially more public engagement than coverage of routine royal duties. This created practical pressures on how resources and attention were allocated within royals' communications operations. Royal historians and constitutional experts began writing analyses about what these developments might mean for the long-term evolution of the monarchy. Several noted that institutions often change not through dramatic revolutionary moments, but through gradual shifts in practice that accumulate over time. The Diana Initiative, in this view, represented not a rejection of the monarchy, but an adaptation of it to contemporary expectations about leadership and public service. The question that emerged from this period was whether the monarchy could successfully incorporate these new approaches while maintaining its traditional foundations. Some observers argued that William and Kate were demonstrating exactly how this could work, showing that royal status could be leveraged to draw attention and resources to important causes while operating with transparency and accountability that satisfied modern standards. Others were less certain, noting that the tension between the established hierarchy and the new model of royal engagement remained unresolved. The popularity of William and Kate's approach didn't automatically translate into institutional change. The monarchy's formal structures, protocols, and power dynamics were still governed by centuries of precedent that couldn't be easily overwritten by public opinion or individual initiative. What became clear during this period was that public expectations of the royal family were indeed shifting. Opinion research conducted by various polling organizations showed that younger generations in particular valued demonstrated commitment to social causes over ceremonial functions. They were more interested in what royals actually did to make a difference than in the pageantry and tradition that had defined royal identity for previous generations. The Diana Initiative had tapped into these changing expectations, not through calculated public relations strategy, but through genuine alignment with values that resonated with contemporary sensibilities. Transparency, accountability, direct engagement, and measurable impact were principles that people increasingly expected from all institutions, including the monarchy. By the end of this transformative period, William and Kate had effectively redefined what it meant to be active working members of the royal family, at least in the public imagination. They hadn't abandoned their formal roles or rejected their heritage, but they had demonstrated that royal status could be used as a platform for substantive work that made tangible differences in people's lives. Whether this model would become the template for the future monarchy or remain an exceptional approach by one generation remained to be seen, but its influence on public perceptions of royal duty was undeniable.